Welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Joining me now from Texas, Captain Ron. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Many Americans right now are starting to rethink, should we celebrate Columbus and have a national holiday in his name, such as here in Los Angeles, where they made it Indigenous Day. And today we have representatives of the Order Sons of Italy in America, representing Colorado, California, New York, and the Commissioner of Social Justice, President Kevin Kyra, is going to be here talking to us about why Columbus deserves to have this holiday and has made an impact on America. And we want to hear their side of the story of how proud they are Italian Americans made an influence and a real contribution to America in what it is today. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, members of Order Sons of Italy in America.
You have all members there with us, Tony?
Yeah, I think we have them all here.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Captain Ron. This is Kevin Kyra. I'm the national president for the Commission for Social Justice for the Order Sons of Italy in America. And with me today is John Fratta, who's the chairman for the Commission for Social Justice in New York. Tony Rezzavuto, who's the chairman for the Commission for Social Justice in California, and Jerry Carleo, who serves on the Commission for Social Justice in Colorado. So we're very happy to be with you today.
Welcome, guys, and we really appreciate you taking your Friday evening to do this with us because, like I said, here in Los Angeles, I didn't even know that they changed Columbus Day to Indigenous Day, and then I started doing research, and I saw that there was somebody, I think somebody in New York was trying to change it, in New York City at least.
There's other places, I think Detroit too. Right?
Yeah, and yes, I think Detroit, and I'm sure it's catching on. And so before we get into the actual the people, starting to rethink it, not saying that everybody, the majority is, but are people that are rethinking the changing Columbus to Indigenous Day. But I'd really like to get to know your organization, Order Sons of Italy in America. If you guys can explain your organization and tell us the history of it.
Sure, just a little bit of it. We're celebrating our 112th anniversary as an organization. We were founded in 1905 in New York by Dr. Vincenzo Solero. And the Sons of Italy is the oldest and largest organization representing Americans of Italian heritage in the United States. And we have lodges and affiliations in Canada as well. We have family members across all 50 states, including the District of Columbia. We're made up of Grand Lodges, and there are 18 of those. We also have filial lodges in places like South Carolina, North Carolina, and Texas. We have 300 lodges. We call them lodges. Some people call them chapters, I guess.
Right.
And approximately 40,000 members across the country.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. And we're made up of men and women, very dedicated to their heritage and culture, and it's open to anybody can join.
Really?
You don't have to be Italian to join the Sons of Italy. And the National Order has a couple of arms to it, let's say. One is the Sons of Italy Foundation. And the Sons of Italy Foundation is the philanthropic arm of OSIA, or the Order Sons of Italy in America. The foundation was established in 1959, and it provides contributions for education and medical services and disaster relief. Three of our major charities are Cooley's anemia, which is a blood disorder that affects children, Alzheimer's, which I'm sure everybody is aware of that dreadful disease, and the Doug Flutie Foundation for Autism. And we also have a large scholarship program, and we've been working with a number of disaster relief programs earthquake relief and with the hurricane issues that are happening. Since its inception, we've contributed close to $165 million.
Wow.
In all of that, in all of those endeavors that we do.
That's
and then
that's
the
amazing.
second arm of the order is made up of the Commission for Social Justice, and that was established in the early 70s, and it is the anti-defamation arm of the Order Sons of Italy, and it fights against stereotyping of Italian Americans in the entertainment, advertising, and news industries. And we also have a positive imaging program that we established to counteract the negative depictions of Italian Americans as well. And we have a number of different types of reports and studies that we've published, and one of those being Columbus Fact versus Fiction. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But my other colleagues could probably say a little bit about the Sons of Italy as well, unless you think I covered it all pretty well.
Well, I'm curious because, I grew up in Kansas and, white Christian. And I'm curious, like, what are some of the stereotypes? Because, I'm 48, so I'm not too old, but I'm not young. So I'm trying to, what are some of the stereotypes that you're still fighting against?
Well, we have them. You see them on TV all the time. You have references to The Godfather. You have references to depicting women in a different light that it's just offensive. Right. For instance, we just had Saturday Night Live back in April. Ran a program called Tenement Museum, and it was probably one of the ugliest depictions of Italian and Italian Americans, and also of Polish Americans and African Americans. And I know John has been dealing with John Frater in New York has been dealing with it because Saturday Night Live, I believe, is filmed in New York.
Right.
And it was just an awful stereotyping of Italian and Italian Americans, if you saw it. And if you didn't see it, and I'm not suggesting that you you see it.
I don't watch Saturday Night Live.
It was an April 8th filming, and I think you would just be as disgusted about it as we are, and we're still waiting for an apology from Saturday Night Live for depicting people in that light.
John, I'm gonna.
So it's still out there. I mean, we have Shark Tale, Disney depicting in a Disney picture depicting people as gangsters. So that it's still prevalent to some.
Well, I'm going to ask John then, because since Saturday Night Live is in New York, and when you see something that is filmed in your city, how do you approach that? How do you handle it? Because these media organizations are huge; they're powerful. How does your organization approach that and try to make a difference and make a change?
Well, the first thing we did in New York was wrote to all the sponsors of Saturday Night Live, asking them to withdraw their sponsorship. Of course, we out of the sponsors that we did write to, we only got 2 responses back, and they were basic responses. We have no control how NBC uses our dollars. They don't put the dollars in Saturday Night Live. They put the dollars in NBC. So what we did after that, we did a letter writing campaign and a phone call campaign to NBC, asking them to pull Saturday Night Live and for a public apology. And we're still waiting for a response on that. We had some elected officials that came on board with us. I mean, it was the most disgusting show that I've seen in all my years. And it was outright. It was really outright discriminatory and bigoted, but it's something that we fight all the time.
I hate to even admit this, but I'm going to, that it's sad because somebody like myself that, like I said, I took a DNA test. I didn't know that I had, and I took great pride in every DNA test that I'm, because I'm a mutt. I have so much, like completely a mutt, but I take great pride in everything that I match to. From Spanish to actually a little bit of Indian from India. I took great pride in it, and so it's hard for me to even think about just the white Christian Americans that are not from the Italian descent to even to criticize, to degrade, especially Italy or people from Italy and their ancestors, because they have contributed so much. I mean, and it's not just the Italian restaurants. I mean, you guys have created so much for the world, not just America. So we'll get into that with the Columbus, but I couldn't imagine. Can you tell us a little bit about the pride of being an Italian for the people that really don't know what it is to grow up in an Italian family, and because I know you guys are very close knit. So could you tell us about the growing up in an Italian family?
Well, for the Italian Americans, I mean, we're very family oriented, very religious, and we try to keep the family. The family is key, keeping the family together. I still have my Sunday dinners with my family. It's something that my grandparents did. And it's pride that we have. We're proud of the achievements of Italian Americans. And it's something that, even though we get attacked at times for something stupid, but it doesn't diminish our pride.
Mm-hmm. What about you other guys? Tony or?
Oh, it's the same thing for us. The Italians have a lot of traditions, and the traditions go back a long way, back to Sicily, back to wherever state they're from. And each state is a little bit differently. I mean, everybody loves the Italian wines. They love the Italian food. And it's a mainstay for myself, really. I love going to Italian stores, looking at the different type of cheeses, pastas. I mean, these are items that you don't find in normal stores, but they're available to everybody, and it's fun. It's quite it's a very proud to be Italian, no doubt about it.
And I mean, I'm already getting comments in some of our chat rooms, because not only on UBN but other places, but and a lot of people, like I said, I don't think they really think about the history of not just the Columbus, but the Italian heritage. And some people, they're like, I don't think Columbus should have his own holiday, because of, again, like the stereotypes. And I was looking through your presentation that you put together about the facts and fiction of Columbus. So I would love to start going into what's your thoughts on Columbus and Columbus Day versus some people like here in LA, the Indigenous Day. What is your thoughts on changing that holiday? I know the answer, but some of our listeners may be surprised and need to know a little facts.
Well, Columbus Day recognizes the achievements of a Renaissance explorer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy founded basically the first European settlement in the New World, and brought a lot of immigrants over. They were able to sail the seas and get here and to change and become America, although he didn't land in America. That's one of the most important things that he did.
Right. Yeah, today's society is overlooking and undermining Christopher Columbus's contribution to the present-day America. Columbus, if Columbus hadn't been brave enough to venture out, the United States, as we know it, wouldn't be what it is today. His voyage launched the Columbian Exchange, which is a term used to describe the the transfer of European art and technology, agriculture, the law that we have in America, the entire European culture in which we base ourselves today was kickstarted by Christopher Columbus's travel west.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people try to judge him on 21st century law, and he was a 15th century person, and you can't impose the law of today on what happened in the 15th century.
Right.
You know, he certainly opened up the opportunity of a new land and the opportunity of the oppressed people in Europe to travel and to come over here. And look at all the contributions that have been made, you know, to, like I said, to art and government, the economy, and it's the basic foundation of what this great nation is. And he should be admired for doing that, for taking the leap, as it were, to travel across the Atlantic unknowing. And,
hey guys, when did this creep up, this whole anti-Columbus Day thing? Because to be honest, I haven't heard about it till this year.
I didn't either. I this is the first year I've heard of it.
You know, that's a perfect segue, you guys. And when Kevin said that he should be honored for what he did, he's been honored for 525 years.
Right.
And the reality of this whole circumstance is that he has, because of his voyage, we wouldn't have the opportunity to be sitting here talking to you across 5 different states with electronic technology that links us all together instantaneously. So that's the net. There isn't any other individual holiday, national holiday, that can tie itself into that reality. This was a turning point for humanity when he came across the ocean and made that first landfall. Is there any civilization, is there any culture that you can name that doesn't have mistakes and errors? And the answer is, of course not.
Right.
The measure of a culture is how you seek to continue to evolve and continuously better yourself. And more importantly,
America,
reaching out to lend a hand to somebody else. When Kevin just began the top of the hour, he explained to you that one of the first things that has occurred in Order Sons of Italy was the establishment of the foundation of the philanthropic arm of that organization with the expressed interest and desire to reach out to help others. That's the founding mark of this entire holiday. Mm-hmm. This Columbus Day isn't about Columbus. It's about the immigrants that have come to America. All immigrants that have come to America to make the fabric of what you and I call America. Tony, you just said yourself, your mixed background, and you have an honor and a respect for every one of the cultures that
Right.
make up your bloodlines. And that's what this whole thing is about.
Right.
This is not just an Italian heritage, just because we have dinners on Sunday night and we have respect for our families. It's the reality that it's the linkage to culture and how everybody is one.
Right.
That's what this holiday is about. In only the last 20 years have you really seen misguided activities that have attempted to besmirch the reputation of a navigator that is unrenowned for his capabilities.
Well, it seems like it's really
also
increased
particularly
lately.
back what Kevin mentioned also about the fact that those who seek to apply this 21st century knowledge
Right.
and legal constructs to something that happened 500 years ago, it's just a slippery slope. What do you think is going to happen 500 years from now when they look back and look and see how we were living and operating across the world? It's an indefensible perspective to attempt to try to do that, which is why it's flawed and frankly fraudulent on its face when somebody tries to do it today.
Well, it seems like it's
And not only
really
that,
bubbling up
well-
too. We've got Phoenix had vandalized Columbus statues all over the place. Milwaukee, there's a whole bunch of cities here that they said just Monday they got vandalized across the country. It's really coming to a head right now, and I wonder why all of a sudden right now it's so intense.
Well, okay, so this is a dicey area, but if you believe moment that these incidents are isolated without any coordination behind them, that's a fundamental mistake. There are fundamental changes that are going on in the United States of America that some people don't like how it's operating. They do not like our ongoing success. They don't like our economic stability. They don't like the opportunities that we're providing. So in that context, how do you disrupt a nation? By pitting people against themselves.
That doesn't mean that you take a sledgehammer or paint to a statue.
Absolutely. Defacing public.
It's been going on for quite a while.
That's public vandalism.
And that's the whole point. It's a despicable act to deface an inanimate object because an individual has placed themselves in a mental capacity of being a victim. That's the underlying message to all of these activities, is that all of the groups that are taking these actions and making these assertions have, in fact, placed themselves in a position of victimhood. If they step out of that victimhood and they reach out, those are the signs and the evidence of a well-functioning mental capacity of a living being. But if you allow yourself to be wrapped up into a victimhood, then you are literally, by definition, putting yourself into a mental prison, which no good thing can result from that.
And I think because this is going a little off topic, but it's still on topic when it comes to the again, being from the Midwest, the defacing the Confederacy, the flags and statues. I mean, I agree that this is, like I said, this is separate from Columbus, but I agree with, that even though it does represent a negative of our past, I still feel that our past needs to be visible so we can actually be reminded constantly where we came from. And Columbus, like I said, there are people saying, well, he didn't even discover America. He didn't step foot on America. There were, Vikings here before us. There were Spaniards here before us. Native Americans were here before us. But we do have to admit that his was the most significant, at least for that period, that brought the attention it needed to open up America to the world. Am I right? Am I correct?
It literally opened up the trade ways on the northern hemisphere. As you guys are well aware, the only previous trade routes that went back to the Far East were overland through some very treacherous terrain, and it would literally take them months. In fact, it took 3 months longer to go overland from the European continent to the Far East than it did in passing through alternate routes. Right. So that was the whole point. That's one of the things that Columbus spent 8 years doing, and being turned down and going back and being turned down. 8 years of making these proposals to Queen Isabella as well as the Queen of Portugal to fund that expedition to find the pathway west. And when that finally occurred, it's just like any other investors that we run into today. Right. Once they saw the capability, once they saw the possibilities, you had funds that were flowing in to fund multiple expeditions. But the point is, the first one that established the viability, and I'm not taking anything away from Leif Erikson, the individual that established the viability for trade and commerce sustained between the Western Hemisphere and the European continent was Columbus. So we first start there. We honor that recollection. We honor that memory. And then secondarily, we absolutely pay attention to the heritage and the culture as it's continued to evolve, and recognizing that we have a responsibility to play not only in our own backyard, but on a world format. And that goes back to what Kevin talked about a little bit ago. The recognition that from the OSEA's perspective of establishing the foundation is one part and parcel to our recognition of acknowledging a higher relationship to all the people that live on this planet.
That's, I mean, well said, well said. And I really think that, and like I said, Captain Ron and I, we're very neutral. We like to bring together people that disagree, and at least to understand history and understand a situation that, you know, we can walk away and at least know that we've been heard, and know that everybody has their side of the story. And there's a fact sheet that you put together that I love. I think it's great. I wish most people could see this, and I'm hoping that we can share this if you don't mind. But you were saying about Columbus, because there's a fiction about Columbus was a slave trader, and can you touch on that subject there, because I know a lot of people may be surprised.
Let me touch on the first thing on that. A lot of these historians and people who talk badly about Columbus being a slave trader, they've really never looked at his journals, and his journals really say a lot. One of the biggest things I got from it, especially on the slave trade issue, is when he went back the first time, he brought 6 Indians back. Now, were they slaves? Now, they may not want to go on a ship that long, that's for sure.
Right.
But you know what? They were brought back to learn Spanish so that they could come back to the United States and work with both sides, the Spanish military, Navy, whatever it was that Columbus was bringing, because his crew was not all Italians. They were mainly Spanish. So
that's another thing. It's funny we talked about that. People thought Columbus was Spanish. Many people on the street do, anyway.
A lot of people believe he was Spanish. He was born in Genoa.
Yeah, some people.
I know, but they think that. Isn't that funny?
He was born in Genoa, and he was Italian, as far as I know.
No, he's.
Go ahead, Tony. Tony, finish up your thought.
It's probably a misnomer to say he was Italian, because the nation of Italy wasn't formed until into the 1800s. So he was from Genoa. And he ultimately moved his family to Spain after his expedition. And I believe he probably he passed when he was living on Spain. But all of that said, going back to what Tony just said a moment ago, the issue at hand is not where he was from. It was the value of the activity of opening up that trade route. And the 6 Taino Indians that he brought back, you realize when they were being brought back to learn Spanish, he was creating the initial State Department for the two nations in order for these events to continue to evolve. So this is a pretty incredible act. You don't see the breadth and depth of the organization in any other expeditions, with the exception of what Amerigo Vespucci did when he went to South America. He did a very similar thing by establishing a cadre of initial Indians that he worked with, and that allowed for trade and commerce to commence between Europe and the South American continent. So all of these activities, again, as I mentioned, when you prove the concept, then the money follows the opportunity. And that has proven itself for 525 years. We're seeing the same thing happening with the private space expedition that you see being done by the guys from Tesla. When you see proof of concept, then the conservative funding and those dollars come back in to make that activity explode and flower and bloom. And that's essentially we've been blessed on the United States of America because of that activity that was all initiated by the spark plug called Columbus.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing too, don't forget, there were a lot of Spanish explorers that came here, and with missionaries, and on both sides of the continent, through Florida, through California, and established missions all throughout. Some forced languages, some forced their Catholicism on Indians. They brought them back as slaves, everything too. But you know, you don't see that same issue that's being brought up against other explorers as they are on Columbus.
And
no, you don't. And you know, I want to highlight one very, very important point for this whole discussion, and that is when we've been sharing with you the idea about how and why we respect Columbus and the Italian heritage and the aspects that have resulted from this connection with the Western Hemisphere. You don't hear the Italian organizations place themselves in a position of victimhood.
Right.
We paid our dues. And if you want evidence of that, you watch and you go through the history books and you find and you watch the massive influx of European immigrants in the United States, a great deal of which were from Italy because of the severe economic depression, the 1800s to the early 1900s. Those people, unfortunately, that our ancestors were treated poorly. But you're not hearing us discuss that. In fact, that was forbidden. I still remember my grandfather saying, "We're speaking English. We live in America. We've now adopted this country as our own, so we don't speak Italian here." Now, I still to this day feel badly that I never pressed him to teach me Italian, but that's just, you know, the way it goes. That's an indication of the commitment that immigrants had when they came to this country. So what you're seeing is you've seen a dilution of the commitment to respecting the values of the United States. The very country that gives you the right to dissent, which is great, everybody has that right, is now being used in a fashion that is not reasonable because there's no value add. When you're dissenting and you're destroying public property and painting, those are all things of, again, mentally unstable activities because of the self-imposed victimhood.
I think what was just said is key. When Italians came to this country, they became American, and they were proud to be in this country. To them, this was the greatest country in the world, and it still is. And we proved our loyalty to America in World War II, where we had the largest ethnic bloc.
In Vietnam and Korea and
Korea. Well, we were fighting against Italy at the time. So
that's exactly right.
Homeland,
Wow.
we knew that we had to fight for America. And it's something that we'll do over and over again.
So I want to ask this then. So being Italians and Columbus being Italians, by the attack on Columbus, you take this to heart. And if so, why do you take it to heart so much? Just because he happened to be an Italian? Because, like I said, I think that if Columbus didn't discover it, it was not going to be too much longer. Somebody else would have done it.
Oh, totally.
And he
did, and that's the most important thing.
Right.
He did.
Of course.
He was the first one.
That's
and
the
that's
key.
a honor.
Sure, because you could do that with everything.
Exactly.
If you could say that about Edison. Well, God, if Edison didn't invent
right.
the electric light, somebody else would have. Well,
right.
in fact,
another issue too.
If that Tesla did, he just didn't get credit for it. So we could go through the revisionist history for the next 3 weeks, and that wouldn't change an absolute thing. What remains point and focus, though, Tony, is the reality that when the immigrants came to America, including the Italians in the group that we're representing tonight,
right,
they adopted the tenets and the official commitment to this nation. And they still remember with respect the heritage and the culture. And that's what makes this country so magnificent. The Indians, the Germans, the Irish, the Africans, the Indians, Chinese. They're all the fabric. There isn't any other place in the world that has the fabric of the United States of America. That's why when you see the division amongst Americans, you know that it's an artificial, it's a, what's the phrase they're using now? False flag. It's an absolute indication that somebody's manipulating, because that's not the tenet of the United States of America. It just isn't.
Okay, let me ask you this then, guys.
We have such a way of
That's
political
true,
correctness.
is it moving this way? Do you think we're going to have more of this in the next 3 to 5 years?
Wait a minute, guy. So
We're
Ron,
talking over each other.
yeah. So Ron, go ahead. Who is finishing their thought?
I think it was Tony Reservuto in California.
So Tony, go ahead and finish your thought.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was talking about it. If you see these issues that are happening right now in these cities, we are part of it. We are not invited to these. Type wrong or Indigenous person compared to an Italian compared to something else, and it's almost, if you really think about it. I read an article in a paper once that the writer wrote, "Is this a racial issue now coming out against Italians again?" And it could be. I mean, when you really think about it.
I've heard that as well, Tony. But the other thing that everyone needs to understand is that the Sons of Italy is not opposed to an Indigenous Peoples Day. We just don't feel it should be
replacing,
taking the place of
replacing Columbus Day.
Right.
Well, it's a federal holiday, is what it is, and it's been a federal holiday since 1937, and it's called Columbus Day. And I don't think that that city councils and town selectmen should be arbitrarily just changing that name because of political pressure.
Right.
It's a federal holiday, and as I said, the Sons of Italy is not opposed to an Indigenous Peoples Day. And as a matter of fact, on August 9th, the United Nations has already declared August 9th as Indigenous Peoples Day around the world. So there is actually a day already out there. So why, do...
And the whole month of November is Indigenous Peoples Month.
I didn't even know that.
Indigenous Peoples Month. So it just boggles my mind as to why they have to impose this upon Columbus Day.
This is just an Italian issue. We have with us Letitia James, the public advocate of New York, who said it the best. She said, "Who's next? If we allow this to happen to Italian Americans, who's the next group that's going to get attacked?" She said, "It's got to stop. We're one country. We're one great nation. And each of our ethnic groups brings something very important to this country, and we have to celebrate it instead of attack it." The unfair attacks on Columbus, I mean, they're blaming him for things that happened after he discovered America by people that came afterwards. That's ridiculous. That's like blaming Fleming for people that died from penicillin. You just don't do it. There's good that happened. The discovery of America was great, the greatest discovery ever. And, just to blame him because people that came afterwards maybe have done this. And let's also remember, there's been slavery in America, in these lands, before Columbus got here. Slavery was widely used in this country. So It's not just Columbus that brought that slavery over.
I love it.
And that's the setup question, Tony, because the act of slavery has been around for literally thousands of years. As bad as that leaves a taste in everyone's mouth, it's been on every continent, and it still exists today. So that's a different aspect. And again, something else that we can argue about or discuss for the next 3 months or 3 years, and we're not going to get a resolution to it because the resolution is always going to be dancing around the political correctness. So about that being discussed in the commentary from New York, when you allow the personal offense of one group to be dictating what another group chooses to honor in their heritage and culture, then that's a very, very slippery slope, because now you have the absolute, you pen the destruction of the fabric of the nation. And it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter whether it's here or Germany or in Russia or in China. So that is one of the fundamental tenets that the founding forefathers recognized. And that's why there's such an extraordinary protection of the First Amendment right for free speech. But nowhere in that First Amendment is there a guarantee of your ability to besmirch or to disrupt activities of another cultural group. And that's what never gets part of the news. That's because there's no, with the exception of you guys and shows like what's on UBN, there isn't any journalism out in the mainstream media. It's all about tickers for commercial advertising. So that's why this issue is point and center, because it has an extraordinary impact on the future for all of us, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, Captain Ron, did you have a question? Because we have about 7 minutes left, and I can't believe this hour is going so damn fast, and you guys are so damn interesting.
I did, Tony. I wanted to see if these guys felt that this was moving in that direction, or if this is enough pushback, because all of a sudden it's bubbling up. There's protests from Baltimore all over. Do you think in 5 years this could topple, or where do you guys see this headed?
I'm looking at a survey that was just taken by the Knights of Columbus and the Marist poll, and it says there that 62% of the Americans still express favorable opinions of Christopher Columbus in the Columbus Day holiday. So it's still a high mark.
And it's not just not people either. But you know what? After this Indigenous Indian Day was proclaimed in Los Angeles, and Tony, I understand you're from L.A., how many ads did you see for Columbus Day sales?
Right.
Did you see any Indigenous Indian Day sales?
They filled the paper. Are you kidding me?
Totally. They're still believing in Columbus Day. I mean, it's still a national holiday. They can't take that away from us.
Right.
No.
That is true.
Yeah, as John said, what's next? I mean, are they looking to take away President's Day because we had presidents that were slave owners, and we had 41 of our 58 signers of the Declaration of Independence were slave owners? So are they going to take away the 4th of July? It just, I'm hoping
there's no edge when you start down that political correctness path. So we choose consciously not to go there, because it's not a value add.
Right.
It's simply a philosophical political discussion trap. What we are focused on, Tony and Ron, is the ongoing respect for the heritage and the culture, the value add that has been measured by literally thousands of Italian men and women and children, as well as that many more of other immigrants that have added value to the fabric of the United States of America.
Right.
When you add value, the legacy will be remembered. When you destroy stuff and you disrespect other cultures and activities, that is not long for this earth. And my prediction is not only will we keep Columbus Day, that it will be recreated in ways which is a good thing to further expand the awareness of the heritage and culture, and again, the philanthropic activities. That's what our belief is. That's what we're actively working on. We're not just talking about it.
Yeah, and I
mean, Columbus Day is one of the oldest American patriotic holidays.
Yeah.
Celebrated first back in the 18th century. I don't see it being removed. It's not.
No, I don't see it being removed.
Well,
it's just
like anything else.
A local basis.
If you shirk your responsibilities for remembering the past, then you're going to repeat the mistakes in the future. So these activities have borne themselves out around the world in every nation on this earth. And in every case, when the people become complacent and they become disinterested and they replace personal convenience and their personal activities, their sense of their personal well-being ahead of everything else, then things tend to go into the toilet. However, if you remain steadfast in recognizing that, first of all, the respect for the nation that allows us to live, work, breathe, have kids, and enjoy an incredible way of life, if you instill those values into your children and you work with your neighbors to recognize that there's a responsibility to look out for each other in your neighborhood, within your city, within your state, and across the nation, you've seen evidence of this. Things just work really well. But we have to constantly be on guard for those acts and actions, those misguided acts and actions by groups that want to break up the fabric of America by dividing people against each other. And as long as you can see that as the fundamental tenet, then you can guard against it and not get caught up into the traps of political correct philosophical activity.
And you know what it is too. We're looking at politicians that are making up on these committees and boards and council members, etc. And what are they scared of? They're scared of the votes. They're scared that they're going to hurt somebody's feelings. These Native Americans they have their days. In Nevada, for instance, they have 4 holidays already. I mean, they want to take everything that they can, but they want to use Columbus as their catalyst, which is wrong. And it's a political faction right now that's doing it. And it's something that we have to. We're not against the Native Americans at all. We honor what they are, but they don't feel the same way towards
It's a small group. Admittedly, it's a small group that's messing up their reputation for everybody.
And I have to say, before we get out of here, my 7th grade grandfather was Richard Stockton. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Even though I'm very proud of that, and yes, he had slaves. That's one thing I'm not proud of, but I can't change that. We have to learn from our past. We have to learn from the good and the bad of our ancestors, and we have to make for a better future. And I do agree with you that Columbus, that even though people in the chat room, I've seen good and I've seen people defend and I've seen people oppose, but we can't change the past, but we have to learn from what he brought to this, not just country, but to the world, because like you said, he did contribute to what we are now. And who knows what we would be if he did not make that voyage. So we do have to respect that. And yes, Native Americans, and I was actually hoping that I would have a little Native American blood in me, but I did not. But they did suffer a lot after, not because of Columbus, but from the people that arrived thereafter. We do have to come together and realize that we are the future. We are the changes that can make, and coming together like you guys, being proud of your heritage and the Native Americans being proud of their heritage is what's going to make us a better country and a better place. So we want to thank you guys for joining us. Kevin, John, Tony, Jerry, you guys,
thank you.
You taking your time and giving us this knowledge, stuff that we didn't know, that hopefully our listeners and our viewers will take away and rethink. If you're opposed, at least see there's another side. And if you still oppose, that's fine. That's what America's all about. We can speak up and we can talk about what we agree with and what we don't agree with, but we still are all Americans, and we do all have a past of heritage that we can be proud of. So thank you guys. Could you give us a rundown of where people can find out more about you guys? If you're an Italian heritage, maybe they want to join up and be a part of your organization.
Sure. We have a website, www.osia.org, and our phone number at the national headquarters is 202-547-2900. And if you're interested in finding any locations, you can Google the Sons of Italy, and you can find a location that's near you that you'd like to join, or you can call the national office and they'll direct you.
So Tony, just also to tag on what Kevin is saying, would you have any issue if Kevin and Tony and I shared some local lodge chapter, Grand Lodge information with you guys, maybe
Yes.
to have that available as links on your website?
I would love that. We'll definitely do that.
All right, so we'll follow up with you. We won't take the time on the show, but look for us to follow up with you, and that'll provide some additional information that would be very useful for you.
You got it. And for everybody out there, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Truth Be Told TV. And we would love for you to subscribe. Share this if you guys believe or not believe, because I think this conversation needs to keep going forward. Go to our website, truthbetoldwebtv.com, and check out all our upcoming guests. We really appreciate you guys. And Captain Ron, I can't wait to have you back in studio. And so you guys have a great week until next time right here on Truth Be Told.
Thank you very much.
You got it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care.